The jungle of Erebus 4 was an unbroken labyrinth of shadows and sound. Towering trees clawed at the sky, their tangled roots sinking into damp, shifting earth. A thick fog hung low, curling around massive ferns and the gnarled trunks of alien vegetation. Somewhere in the distance, something howled, long, guttural, and hungry. Sergeant Duncan adjusted his night vision goggles, peering through the dense foliage. "I don't like this," he muttered. "Feels like we're being watched." Captain Adrian Cole crouched beside him, eyes sharp and calculating. "We are." His voice was barely above a whisper. "But that's good. Means they're exactly where we want them." The Dominion's elite warriors, the Tarknoth hunters, had landed on Erebus 4 3 days ago. They came in squads of 10, armored in shimmering exosuits, their energy rifles humming with plasma charges. Their commanders expected a routine sweep, a demonstration of superiority. Instead, their numbers had already started to dwindle. Cole's team, a 6-man unit of Earth's Special Forces, had been hunting them from the moment they arrived. He pressed 2 fingers to his earpiece. "Status? 3 targets 20 meters ahead," came Lieutenant Ramirez's quiet reply. "They're moving slow. Scanning with drones." Cole smirked. "Not gonna help them." The jungle didn't play by Dominion rules. Their heat scanners were useless against the thick canopy, and their drones fared no better, jammed by the planet's unpredictable magnetic fields. They were blind, forced to rely on senses they'd long since neglected. And Cole was about to teach them a lesson in survival. He signaled his team. 5 figures melted into the underbrush without a sound. The Tarknoth patrol advanced, their armored boots sinking into the soft, wet earth. Their leader, a tall, reptilian alien with blue-tinted scales, turned his head sharply. "They are close," he growled in his native tongue. His 2 companions tensed, gripping their rifles. Cole exhaled slowly, counting the seconds. 5, 4, 3. A branch snapped somewhere behind the aliens. They whirled around, weapons raised. Cole struck. He moved like a ghost, slipping through the underbrush and driving his combat knife deep into the nearest Tarknotha's throat. The alien gurgled, claws twitching, before collapsing silently. Ramirez took the second, a single suppressed shot punching through its visor. The alien slumped against a tree, a hole cleaned through its skull. The leader spun, eyes wide. His plasma rifle hummed, but he hesitated. Too late. Duncan's garrote looped over his throat, yanking him backward into the shadows. He thrashed, feet kicking at the air. There was a wet crack, then stillness. Cole crouched and wiped his blade on a leaf. "Textbook," he murmured. "Move the bodies. Leave no trace." Within seconds, the jungle swallowed its secrets. Cole tapped his earpiece. "First squad neutralized. Moving to next position." Miles away, Commander Vorkal 9 stood inside the Dominion's forward base, staring at a holographic display. 3 signals had just winked out, gone, without so much as an alarm. His mechanical fingers twitched. Unacceptable. The Tarknoth were elite hunters, trained in every form of combat the Dominion valued. And yet, in this primitive jungle, they were dying. It was an insult. A subordinate, a smaller Zelvani with dull metallic implants, hesitated before speaking. "Shall I dispatch additional patrols?" Vorkal's gaze flicked toward him. "No. Enough games." He turned to the gathered soldiers. "Deploy the sentinels. Let us see if these humans can hide from them." The order rippled through the ranks. The sentinels, massive, quadrupedal war machines, powered up, their red optics flaring to life. The hunt was about to change. Cole and his team were on the move again, slipping through the undergrowth like shadows. The jungle sang around them, filled with the ceaseless hum of insects and distant, guttural roars of unseen predators. Then the ground vibrated. A deep, mechanical growl rumbled through the trees. Duncan muttered a curse. "What the hell is that?" Cole's jaw tightened. Something new. Ahead, through the shifting foliage, red lights cut through the darkness. Sentinels. Heavy combat walkers, armed with thermal scanners and multidirectional plasma turrets. Cole weighed his options. Engaging them head-on was suicide. Evading them was risky. That left only one choice. He smiled. "We lure them in," he said. His team exchanged looks, but no one questioned him. The jungle wasn't just their battleground. It was their weapon. Cole tapped his earpiece. "Ramirez, set charges at grid 7-2. Duncan, on me. We're leading them right into hell." Duncan grinned. "Let's give them a real Earth welcome." The Dominion sentinels pushed forward, crushing vines and snapping trees under their mechanical limbs. Their scanners flickered, searching for heat signatures. A rustling to the left. Movement. The lead sentinel swiveled, turrets locking on. A single gunshot cracked through the air. The machine roared, firing into the foliage. Plasma bolts tore through leaves, igniting bark. Then the earth gave way beneath it. The jungle floor collapsed, revealing a pit lined with sharpened stakes. The sentinel tumbled in, its legs thrashing. Before it could recover, something above it exploded. A rock slide, triggered by a well-placed charge, buried it in an avalanche of stone and debris. The second sentinel twisted, scanning wildly. A vine-wrapped log, heavy as a battering ram, swung down from the trees, slamming into its sensor core. Sparks erupted. It stumbled, struggling to stay upright, before another detonation sent it crashing into a swamp. Cole crouched on a nearby ridge, watching. "Didn't even break a sweat," Ramirez said, wiping dirt from his rifle. Duncan laughed. "They wanted a fight. Guess they weren't ready for one." Cole's expression hardened. This was only the beginning. The Dominion still didn't understand the fundamental truth of Erebus 4. In the jungle, the strong didn't survive. The smart did. And humans? They were the smartest predators the galaxy had ever seen. The Dominion wasn't laughing anymore. Deep in the jungle, beneath the cover of towering trees and twisting vines, Captain Adrian Cole crouched beside his team. The night belonged to them. Around them, the jungle pulsed with unseen life, distant howls, rustling leaves, the faint hum of insects. But beyond that, something new stirred. Something uncertain. The Dominion had finally learned fear. Cole tapped his earpiece. "Ramirez status?" "Patrol moving slow," came the hushed reply. "They're scanning everything, like scared rookies. I count 7. A pause. "They brought a hound." Cole frowned. The hounds weren't beasts but biomechanical trackers, engineered for war. Each one was a fusion of cybernetics and predatory instinct, equipped with scent analyzers, thermal optics, and an unrelenting drive to kill. "Then we changed tactics," Cole murmured. "No more picking them off one by one." Duncan, crouched beside him, exhaled. "Time for a message?" Cole nodded. "We make them feel it. The jungle would no longer just be a battlefield. It would be a nightmare." Commander Vorkal 9 stared at the latest battlefield report, his claws curling in frustration. Another squad lost. Another failure. The Sentinels, supposedly indomitable, had been outthought, not outgunned. His patrols were being bled dry, lost in the shadows, their remains barely recoverable. And now, his elite forces hesitated. Their movements had changed. Tight formations, paranoid scanning, wasted energy on imagined threats. They were afraid. Vorkal sneered. "Pathetic." One of his lieutenants stepped forward. "The jungle is interfering with our scans. We cannot predict their ambushes." Vorkal's cybernetic eye glowed a deep red. "Then we do not predict. We purge." He turned to a communications officer. "Deploy incendiaries. Burn the forest down." The officer hesitated. "Sir, if we do that." "I did not ask for objections." The command was given. High above, Dominion gunships roared to life, their payloads primed. Fire would flush the humans out. Vorkal leaned back, satisfied. He thought he was taking control. He had no idea what he had just begun. Cole smelled the change before he saw it. A sharp, acrid scent carried on the wind, burning wood, scorched leaves. Then, the distant roar of igniting foliage. They were torching the jungle. Duncan swore. They're panicking. No, Cole said, eyes narrowing. They're trying to force us into the open. Ramirez's voice crackled over comms. Orders? Cole didn't hesitate. We use it. If the Dominion wanted fire, then fire would be their undoing. The jungle burned. Flames slithered through the undergrowth, climbing trees in bright orange fingers. Smoke curled into the sky, thick and blinding. The Dominion forces advanced behind the blaze, their exosuits filtering the air, their rifles poised. The hound prowled ahead, sniffing the air, scanning for movement. It growled, a deep, mechanical rumble. Then it stopped. The lead Tarknoth soldier turned. What is it? A wet thwip answered him. A sharpened vine spear drove through his visor, pinning him to a tree. Chaos erupted. From the smoke, figures moved, human shadows striking with calculated precision. Cole's team used the inferno as cover, moving where the Dominion couldn't. Their helmets shielded them from the worst of the smoke, their bodies adapted to the heat. Not so for the Tarknoth. Their exosuits kept them alive, but they weren't built for extreme temperatures. The heat blurred their vision, sweat stung their eyes, the growing flames forced them back. And the jungle fought with them. Cole swung down from an overhanging branch, boot connecting with a soldier's chest. The alien staggered, rifle swinging up, too slow. Cole's knife punched into his throat. To the left, Duncan fired twice. One shot took out a soldier's knee, the second punched through his skull. The hound turned, red optics flaring. It leaped, metal claws flashing. Ramirez caught it midair with a blast from his shotgun. The explosion sent it sprawling, circuits sparking. It whined, tried to rise, another shot put it down for good. The remaining soldiers broke, retreating through the burning jungle. They weren't fighting anymore. They were running. Cole let them. He needed survivors. Hours later, Vorkal 9 paced inside his command center, his fury barely restrained. The jungle still burned, but it had not flushed the humans out. Instead, it had cost him more soldiers. Then the doors burst open. 2 Tarknoth warriors stumbled in, both injured, their armor cracked and scorched. Their hands trembled. Vorkal's eyes narrowed. Report. One of them swallowed hard. They're not just fighting us. His voice shook. They're hunting us. Vorkal's metallic fingers curled into a fist. You shame your rank with this cowardice. The Tarknoth hesitated, then took a shaking step forward. Sir, they left me alive for a reason. Vorkal's gaze darkened. What reason? The soldier slowly turned, revealing something carved into the back of his armor. 3 deep slashes, etched with precision. The mark of a predator. A warning. Vorkal 9 stared at it, his rage momentarily replaced by something colder. For the first time in his long, decorated career, he felt doubt. The humans weren't prey. They were something else entirely. Something worse. The jungle smoldered, its once thriving canopy blackened by fire and war. Smoke still lingered, curling between charred trees, but beneath the devastation, the Earth's special forces had already adapted. The hunt was far from over. Captain Adrian Cole crouched on a ridge, his expression unreadable. Through the scope of his rifle, he observed the Dominion's forward encampment, an armored bastion surrounded by energy shields, pulsating drones, and Tarknoth sentries on high alert. Fear clung to the air like the stench of burned foliage. They're scared, Duncan muttered beside him, adjusting the strap on his rifle. And desperate. They should be, Cole replied. He tapped his earpiece. Ramirez, you in position? Affirmative, came the lieutenant's voice. Scouted the perimeter. They've doubled their patrols and set up auto turrets, but they're still blind outside the fence. Good, Cole said. They think fortifications will save them. They're wrong. He turned to his team. We hit them hard. No more skirmishes. No more waiting. Tonight we tear their command apart. Duncan grinned. About damn time. Commander Vorkal 9 stood within his command center, brooding. The air was thick with tension. Officers muttered over holographic displays, their eyes darting toward the perimeter cameras. The camp was fortified, defenses reinforced. Yet there was no relief in their movements. The humans had done something far worse than killing. They had gotten inside their heads. Vorkel's mechanical fingers tapped against the steel railing as he studied the latest patrol reports. The jungle had swallowed another squad. No bodies. No gunfire. Just vanished. Erased. A Tarknoth officer approached hesitantly. "Sir, the latest security sweeps have found no signs of human infiltration. It's possible they've—" A flicker on the screen caught Vorkel's attention. One of the outer sensor towers had gone dark. Then another. Then the feed cut out completely. The officer stiffened. "We've lost visual." Vorkel's cybernetic eye gleamed with cold rage. "They're here." Cole moved like a phantom, weaving through the underbrush with surgical precision. The Dominion thought their defenses would keep him out. They had no idea they were already surrounded. He pressed his fingers to his earpiece. "Ramirez, initiate blackout." A quiet click sounded over the comm. Within seconds, the Dominion base flickered. Lights dimmed. Shield barriers pulsed and collapsed. Turrets powered down, their targeting systems scrambled by human interference. The jungle wasn't just a battlefield. It was a weapon. And Cole knew how to wield it. Duncan, crouched beside him, grinned. "They're blind." Cole didn't reply. He raised his fist, signaling his team forward. Inside the Dominion camp, alarms blared. Tarknoth soldiers scrambled to re-establish power, weapons drawn as they scanned the darkness. The silence was suffocating. They could feel it, the presence in the shadows, the invisible eyes watching. Then, the first scream. A guard on the western perimeter dropped without a sound, his body yanked into the undergrowth. A second fell, his own rifle turned against him in the dark. Panic spread. Vorkel stormed into the control center. "Report!" A technician's voice cracked. "We've lost 2 squads. No visuals. No heat signatures." A sharp clank echoed from above. Vorkel's head snapped upward. From the rafters, a Dominion soldier fell, lifeless, a knife buried in his throat. Vorkel's patience snapped. "Enough of this coward's game!" He turned to his soldiers. "Sweep the compound! Flush them out!" The Tarknoth moved, spreading out in tight formations, scanning the shadows with trembling rifles. Their armor was strong. Their weapons were advanced. None of it mattered. Cole struck like a thunderclap. A blade flashed in the dim light. One soldier fell. Another turned, only to be yanked into the dark. A third tried to fire but crumpled under a precise headshot from Ramirez. The Dominion had numbers. The humans had superiority. Duncan's shotgun roared, shredding an officer's chest plate. He pivoted, firing again, 2 down. A Tarknoth lunged at him, but Cole was faster, driving his combat knife into the alien's ribs. The camp erupted into chaos. The humans weren't just attacking. They were dismantling the Dominion, one piece at a time. Vorkel 9 drew his plasma sword, its blue glow reflecting off his armor. If the jungle had taught him anything, it was that brute force wasn't enough. He had underestimated these humans. No more. He stepped forward into the fray. A human lunged from the smoke, fast, but predictable. Vorkel pivoted, blade cutting clean through flesh. The soldier gasped, collapsing at his feet. A growl escaped Vorkel's throat. "You are not predators. You are pests." Another human charged. This one was different. Faster. Smarter. Cole. Their blades met in a flash of steel and energy. Sparks flew as metal clashed. Cole was relentless, his movements precise, every strike measured. Vorkel countered with brutal efficiency. They circled each other, locked in a duel of instinct and training. Vorkel swung, a sweeping arc meant to cleave Cole in half. Cole ducked, using the momentum to drive his knee into Vorkel's chest. The alien staggered, snarling, but recovered. For the first time in years he felt it, pain. Cole didn't let up. A feint, a shift, then a sudden strike. His knife found a weak point in Vorkel's armor, slicing through synthetic muscle. Vorkel roared. This human was dangerous. A blaster shot cracked through the air, Ramirez's sniper rifle. The Dominion forces fell back, leaderless and broken. Vorkel's vision blurred. His soldiers were retreating. The battle was lost. Cole pressed the tip of his knife to Vorkel's throat. Run! His voice was cold, absolute. And when you tell them what happened here, make sure they understand one thing. He leaned in. This is our jungle now. Vorkel's rage burned. But for the first time, he knew fear. He stumbled back, eyes locking onto Cole's. Then he turned and fled. The jungle was quiet again. Not the silence of emptiness, but of dominance, of something reclaiming what was always its own. Smoke still curled from the Dominion's abandoned encampment, the last remnants of their failed invasion. The Earth's special forces had done more than survive. They had won. Captain Adrian Cole stood at the edge of a ridge, watching the distant flashes of retreating Dominion dropships vanish into the atmosphere. The enemy was gone, leaving behind shattered armor, scattered weapons, and the bodies of those who hadn't been fast enough to escape. Duncan exhaled beside him. Didn't think they'd actually run? They didn't have a choice, Cole said. His voice carried no pride, only certainty. They learned. Ramirez approached, securing the last of the captured weapons in a pile. Took him long enough. He nudged a Dominion helmet with his boot. What now? Chase him down? Cole shook his head. No need. They'll spread the word. And that was more powerful than any bullet. The Dominion had thought Earth's wilderness was primitive, that its jungles were just trees and dirt. Now they understood the truth. Earth's jungles weren't just deadly. They had predators. And humans weren't prey. Aboard the Dominion flagship, Vorkel 9 stood before the High Command. The holographic chamber hummed with power as towering alien figures materialized before him, admirals, generals, strategists. Their glowing eyes regarded him with cold calculation. He had barely made it out alive. And now he had to explain why. One of the High Lords spoke first. Your report, Commander Vorkel. Vorkel straightened, forcing himself to ignore the ache in his wounded side. We miscalculated. His voice was firm, despite the humiliation burning in his gut. Human forces were not as expected. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Another High Lord leaned forward. Explain. Vorkel's fists clenched. He had seen war. He had crushed rebellions, broken armies. And yet what had happened on Earth defied logic. They do not fight like other species, he admitted. They are not bound by formation or doctrine. They adapt. They think beyond the battlefield. His cybernetic eye flickered. And they do not fear us. Silence followed. Then a sharp, piercing voice cut through the darkness. They defeated you. Vorkel's muscles tensed. They hunted us. He stepped forward. We assumed they were like the others. Inferior. Predictable. His jaw tightened. That assumption cost us everything. One of the High Lords scoffed. So you suggest we abandon Earth? That we fear them? Vorkel's teeth bared in frustration. I suggest we reconsider. His voice lowered. Because if we continue underestimating them, we will not be the hunters. The High Lords regarded him for a long moment. Then, without a word, the holograms flickered and vanished. Vorkel knew what that meant. No orders. No reinforcement. No acknowledgement of his failure. He had lost more than a battle. He had lost the Dominion's faith. A slow, burning rage built in his chest. This wasn't over. It couldn't be. Earth had won this fight. But wars were never fought in a single battle. Back in the jungle, Cole's team gathered in the ruins of the Dominion camp. They moved efficiently, securing anything of value, setting demolition charges to ensure nothing was left behind. The mission was complete. Duncan crouched near the wreckage of a downed Dominion gunship, running a hand over the charred insignia. They'll come back, won't they? Cole nodded. Eventually. Ramirez frowned. And when they do? Cole glanced at his team, his soldiers, his brothers. They had faced an enemy that outnumbered and outgunned them. They had fought in the dark, in the heat, against an enemy that thought them weak. And they had won. His voice was steady when he answered. We'll be waiting. That night, the jungle whispered its stories. The Dominion had tried to tame it. They had burned it, bled in it, and fled from it. Now the leaves rustled with something more than the wind. A warning. The jungle didn't forget. And neither did its hunters.